Alright, so I played a bit of Skate 2 recently, and I've got some pre-recorded footage from the first two games that I'm going to talk about. I played a bit of the first one a year or so ago, and you can see my terrible attempt to recreate Tommy Wiseau in both games, as usual. But if there's one thing to know before you start the series that I wish I knew before going in, was just the difficulty of it. Granted, I may have downplayed it a bit, thinking, I remember the first two games in particular seemed pretty popular when they came out, and I wouldn't be quite so sure that it would be that bad with it if the average experience had a lot of frustration and learning to do to make decent progress in the game, which is probably my big complaint, just because I literally got skill gapped out of the game 25%, 33% through at best, could have been less. And nowadays, I guess it isn't that big of a deal because I got like the entire trilogy off eBay for like $20 or $30. But if you're buying one of these games independently for 60 and you can only experience a fraction of it for a couple hours before you get, pretty stuck without a significant improvement to your skills, like I, I would have been annoyed back then, but it's okay now. I mean, to be fair, I'm not the most experienced with this genre, I guess. I was more of an SSX guy, which is kind of related, but there's some big differences. I only played a little bit of one of the Tony Hawk Underground games at a neighbor's. And then more recently, like, I think around when it came out for Switch, I played through the remakes of Pro Skater 1 and 2, and I made it through them fine. Can't recall any major issues, but I just never really caught on to the skill required to play these games. I don't know if part of it, like I'm a person too, is that I really don't like playing shooters on console with the thumbsticks. I need a mouse and keyboard to have a good time, unless there's, a lot of aim assist. And these games sort of rely on the thumbstick for a big bulk of your tricks, and I found myself being angled slightly off of the trick I was trying to do, which isn't a big deal for like some stuff, but for other, different events than that, it can get kind of frustrating. Like I said, it's been a little bit since I've played the first one, so the main things I remember is I just remember there was a lot of film events, and I kind of got sort of frustrated and annoyed with them, and that wasn't the case with 2. I don't know if they sort of adjusted the amount or the difficulty. Like, a way that I can imagine things could have gotten frustrated with this game is if they attached skill points to some of your tasks, because normally they would be like, jump here, grind here, jump here. If you do all of that without falling, you're good. But if they also attached, oh yeah, you need a certain score. I don't remember for sure if this game did that, but I could imagine that being a big hindrance for me. Especially too if it was for like a single trick more. Like this event best trick, like I can kind of survive a bit better if you're trying to chain together combos and multipliers. They're a bit more straightforward. But I don't know, I feel like when it's just kind of a single trick, I just don't get it. Sometimes you feel like, your more impressive trick gets less of a score. compared to some of your and your opponent's other tricks in that. Moving on to the second game, though, I was able to make it past what I would call the tier 1 of events. But as soon as I made it to tier 2, I was done. I stood no chance. Without a huge investment, I wasn't willing to give the game. I did make it past all the death races, though. They weren't too bad. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like this was a particularly big difficulty curve in general, though, even too. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I was expecting it, I don't know, a little more gradual. Especially considering, based on death race, there was probably another, tier or two of events that would have, potentially upped things to even crazier lengths. I did appreciate some of the new ideas with this game, like going off your board, and particularly being able to interact with certain props around the area, like all the stuff lined up against the wall right there. For the most part, I can probably move around here and maybe make this skill challenge a bit easier, or try to, because there's different tiers too here. So I guess I could have gone more for the gold here, but I was more than happy for the bronze. Or, whatever they're called here. Actually, I think I did land a tier up here even from the base goal. I do feel like there was a little bit of lost potential, though, with the movable props, because I feel like they were relevant for, the different spots, but I didn't feel too motivated to find them all. When I'm, sort of getting stuck on other parts of the game, I'm not particularly motivated to master anything with it. And the filming challenges are back, as I mentioned, and they're not as bad. And there was a couple, particularly in this DLC section I'm playing through right here, that used some of the props too. But I don't know, you couldn't really use them with different death races or challenge events. I don't really know how you would be able to even use them there, though, to begin with. Maybe it's just one of those better on paper ideas that's hard to actually find applicable situations to use. Oh yeah, because I remember this one. A lot of redos in the game in general, but on this spot, yes, you're probably going to see, because oh, do I get it? Maybe I'm thinking of a different one? I think I might be thinking of a different one. It may have been actually the camera challenge I'm thinking of, because I think I see on this side I can probably just trick and rail. Oh, never mind, there's steps there. So yeah, maybe this is the right one I'm thinking of. Yeah, with the initial spots, you kind of just need to nail a trick on, maybe off, and a rail, and you're pretty solid for the base tier. And even for tier 1 of most of the other events in that too. As I said, though, I do have a copy of the third game, but I'm not particularly motivated to play it like anytime soon. When I look at my backlog, probably in the 4 digits of games I want to eventually play that I have, like it's probably close to the very bottom. I know sometimes I say a game's not very high. This one is particularly not high on the backlog, mainly because I looked it up online and I saw that the games do gradually get a bit easier, but it's like I needed a bit more of an improvement in the second game. Like I said, I only made it maybe a quarter of the way through the first one. I needed to have made it, halfway through this one to feel motivated that I can maybe clear most of the next game to have particular motivation to get to it. I don't know. Maybe it could sneak its way up, but I definitely, like I said, I've only played Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remake. I want to play the rest of the Pro Skaters and the Undergrounds. I got a couple other Tony Hawk games that seemed kind of interesting too, so at least make it through some of them, and even some other obscure titles in sort of this genre before I even consider this. So I don't know, maybe in 10 plus years you'll eventually see me play Skate 3, or maybe the reboot they're doing now, which I'm not motivated to play at all either, given, like I said, I didn't really like these games too much. And aren't they making the new one kind of like a live service shit too? Maybe free to play, which is, even less appealing. If they can find a way to do it, that'll do it. I could be wrong about that, though. I haven't been paying particularly close attention to anything with it, so who knows? It just kind of seems very feasible. So even if they find an more approachable difficulty for someone who sucks like me, then that's a whole other hurdle on top of, not having any sort of nostalgia or just general good reception personally for the IP. That could maybe push me into some of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they nailed kind of more of the actual difficulty of really skateboarding. But like I said, I was going for more of a, I don't know, casual fun experience in general. The opening cutscenes were probably my favorite part of these games, which I can easily just YouTube a video for any new ones they have. Just look like kind of a fun, wacky video with the cast that I can kind of, appreciate the fun vibes of. Can relate, obviously not as, big budget or effort into, but just digging around, doing wacky shit, and, maybe getting it on camera for fun. But yeah, not my cup of tea, but, I can appreciate people who are willing to, master the game in that, though. That's crazy. If you're able to figure it out. No, that's, that challenge is definitely appealing for some people, though, too. Figure, though, it's, a lot of talent or time that, like I said, I've got too many games to play to, the time reward ratio just isn't appealing for me